All right. So you guys sent in a ton of articles about first principles thinking, and it seems like you're really interested in how Elon Musk uses it.
Yeah.
But you want to go beyond just the surface level buzzwords and really figure out how you can actually use this method in your own life.
Yeah, exactly. It's one thing to read about it,
Right.
but it's a whole other thing to actually put it into practice.
Okay, so we've got articles, research papers, even a little bit of historical background here.
Yeah.
So let's start by just getting a really clear picture of what first principles thinking actually is.
Well, it's basically a way of breaking down any kind of complex problem or idea into its most basic and fundamental truths.
Okay.
So it's about kind of stripping away all of our assumptions and getting to the core of things.
This is like peeling back the layers of an onion.
Yeah,
You get rid of all the fluff and you get to the heart of the matter.
that's a great analogy.
Oh, yeah.
And the idea itself actually isn't new. It goes all the way back to ancient Greece. Aristotle, the philosopher, was a big proponent of this kind of thinking.
Right.
He called it finding the first basis of knowledge.
So ancient wisdom with a modern application.
Exactly.
But how does somebody like Elon Musk, who's known for, pushing the boundaries of technology, how does he use this age-old approach?
Well, Musk is like a master at taking this really fundamental way of thinking and applying it to solve some of the toughest challenges we face today. So let's take SpaceX, for example.
Right.
Back in the early 2000s, Musk wanted to get into the space industry, but the cost of rockets back then was astronomical.
I can only imagine launching things into space is not cheap.
Oh, you got that right.
Yeah.
Back then, companies were charging something like $65 million for a single rocket.
Wow.
And most people would have just accepted that, as reality. But Musk took a different approach. He asked, what is a rocket really? What are the essential materials that it's made of?
So instead of just accepting the status quo, he decided to break the problem down to its bare bones.
Exactly. He found that the raw materials, things like aluminum alloys, titanium, copper, carbon fiber, only cost about 2% of that $65 million price tag.
Wait, 2%?
Yeah.
So the actual materials were practically insignificant compared to the final cost.
You got it.
Wow.
That was a huge eye-opener for Musk. It showed him that the traditional rocket industry, they weren't selling these technological marvels. They were selling rockets with these massive markups.
Okay, that's starting to make sense. So how did that insight then lead to SpaceX's success?
Well, armed with this knowledge, Musk decided to start SpaceX with the goal of building rockets from scratch and really focusing on efficiency and cost reduction.
It sounds risky.
Yeah.
But also kind of genius.
It was a gamble, for sure.
Yeah.
But it paid off big time.
Okay.
Instead of just blindly accepting the traditional methods, Musk and his team, they questioned everything.
Right.
They redesigned engines, they streamlined the manufacturing processes, and they even focused on making their rockets reusable, which was unheard of at the time.
And those Falcon 9 rockets landing themselves back on Earth.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a game changer. It felt like watching something out of a science fiction movie.
Absolutely. And by 2017, SpaceX was launching satellites on these reused Falcon 9 rockets for a fraction of the traditional cost.
Wow.
That's the power of first principles thinking.
So questioning those long-held assumptions about how things should be done opened up a whole new world of possibilities.
Exactly. And this wasn't a one-off for Musk either. He applied the same thinking to Tesla.
Okay.
So when he got into the electric vehicle market, the biggest obstacle was the cost of batteries. Everyone thought it was impossible to make these affordable long-range electric cars because of those expensive battery packs.
It's like the same story with the rockets, an industry that's stuck in its ways.
Right.
And just accepting a problem is unsolvable.
Right. Again.
Yeah.
So Musk asks, what is a battery pack actually made of? He breaks it down to its basic elements, lithium, nickel, cobalt, and so on.
And just like with the rockets, I'm guessing the raw materials were way cheaper than everybody was claiming.
He found that the materials cost for a battery pack was just a fraction of what these established manufacturers were charging.
Wow.
So it was another one of those aha moments that proved that the industry wasn't being innovative enough.
Right.
They were just accepting this inflated price as the norm.
So what did Musk and Tesla do with this information?
Well, they started designing and manufacturing their own batteries in-house.
Okay.
They innovated on the battery cell chemistry, the manufacturing process, and they even created those massive gigafactories to scale up production.
And that focus on in-house production and innovation is a big reason why Tesla is now leading the charge in electric vehicles.
Yeah, it's a textbook example of first principles thinking in action.
Wow.
They didn't just accept the limitations that everyone else saw. They went back to the fundamentals and reimagined the entire system.
Okay, my mind is officially blown. So Musk applied this to rockets and batteries. But you mentioned Neuralink earlier. How can you even use first principles thinking to, like, literally rewire the brain?
Well, that's where things get really futuristic. Neuralink's goal is to create this brain-machine interface,
Okay.
a device that can, like, seamlessly connect our brains to computers.
I remember seeing those demos with Gertrude the pig.
Right.
They implanted a chip in her brain, and it was sending her brain activity to a computer in real time. It's pretty mind-boggling.
Yeah, it is pretty amazing. But when Musk got into this field, he saw the same problem we've been talking about.
Okay.
Existing brain implants were, like, bulky, they had limited functionality, and they often required these really invasive surgeries.
So the technology was stuck in a rut, just like with the rockets and the batteries.
Exactly. But instead of just trying to improve on those existing designs, Musk went back to the first principles. He asked, what are the fundamental principles of how the brain works?
Okay.
The brain is an electrical organ. It's constantly sending signals between neurons.
So if you could tap into those signals, you could theoretically transmit information directly to and from the brain.
Exactly. And that insight led to Neuralink's, like, a groundbreaking approach.
Okay.
They developed these incredibly thin, flexible electrodes, almost like threads,
Okay.
that could be implanted with minimal damage to the brain tissue.
Those threads were fascinating. They were thinner than a human hair,
Yeah.
but they were packed with sensors to pick up all those neural signals.
Right. And they also developed a robotic surgical system
Wow.
to implant those threads with, like, incredible precision.
So it's like a high-tech sewing machine for the brain.
Exactly.
And then the implant itself was like super tiny and wireless.
Right.
Nothing like those clunky devices we've seen in the past.
Yeah. It's a perfect example of how first principle thinking can lead to these really radical innovations.
Right.
By understanding the core principles of brain function and questioning all the assumptions about implant design.
Right.
Neuralink created a system that was smaller, safer, and more powerful than anything that came before it.
Okay, I think I'm starting to get this, but these are all examples from Elon Musk. Like, can regular people who aren't trying to colonize Mars or merge with computers actually use first principles thinking in their everyday lives?
Absolutely. That's the beauty of it. It's not just for tech billionaires. It's a mental tool that anyone can use to improve their decision-making, solve problems, and achieve their goals.
All right, I'm sold, but how do we actually do this? Where do we even start?
It's all about training your brain to approach problems from a different perspective.
Okay.
So instead of jumping to conclusions or accepting the status quo, you start by asking some fundamental questions.
So what kinds of questions should we be asking?
Let's say you're trying to improve your productivity at work.
Okay.
Instead of just buying a bunch of productivity apps or trying to copy someone else's routine, start by asking, what are the core principles of productivity?
Okay, so it's about figuring out what truly drives efficiency and focus, not just following the latest trends.
Exactly. Maybe you realize that the core principles for you are minimizing distractions, prioritizing tasks effectively, and taking regular breaks to avoid burnout.
So you're creating a personalized approach based on those fundamental truths,
Yeah.
rather than just blindly following someone else's formula.
You got it. And the same approach can be applied to any area of your life. Let's say you want to improve your fitness.
Okay.
Instead of jumping on the latest diet fad or signing up for an expensive gym membership, ask yourself, what are the essential elements of a healthy body?
Well, I know that proper nutrition and regular exercise are crucial.
Exactly. So you might break down those elements even further.
Yeah.
What does my body need nutritionally? What types of exercises do I actually enjoy? And the answers to those questions will help you tailor your approach to your specific needs and preferences.
So I'm creating a fitness plan that's sustainable and enjoyable, not just following some generic routine that might not work for me.
Exactly. First principles thinking gives you that freedom to design your own path. It's about understanding the why behind the what.
Right.
And then figuring out the how that works best for you.
This is starting to feel very empowering. It's like I'm taking back control of my life by making more conscious and informed decisions.
And that's a key benefit of first principles thinking.
Yeah.
It helps you move away from this reactive decision-making and towards more proactive and deliberate choices.
Okay, so how do we actually apply this? Do we need to write out a bunch of questions every time we encounter a problem?
It doesn't have to be that formal. Think of it as a mental habit that you're developing.
Okay.
The more you practice questioning assumptions and breaking things down to their core elements, the more intuitive it will become.
So it's a skill that we can develop over time. like learning a new language or playing an instrument?
Exactly. And there are some simple techniques that you can use to make this process easier.
Okay.
One helpful method is called the 5 whys.
5 whys. That sounds intriguing.
It's a simple but powerful way to get to the root cause of a problem. You start by stating the problem, and then you ask why 5 times in a row.
So it's like you're peeling away those layers of assumptions until you reach that core issue.
You got it. It's like, let's say you're frustrated because you're constantly late for work.
Okay.
You start by saying, I'm always late for work.
Right.
Then you ask why.
Okay.
Maybe the answer is because I hit snooze on my alarm too many times.
Okay, then you ask, why do I hit snooze so many times?
Exactly. Maybe the answer is because I'm not getting enough sleep. Then you ask, why am I not getting enough sleep? And so on. By the time you've asked why, 5 times, you've likely uncovered the root cause of the problem.
And that root cause might be something you hadn't even considered before.
Right. Maybe you discover that you're staying up too late watching TV or that you're drinking too much coffee in the afternoon.
Okay.
Once you identify that root cause, it's much easier to find an effective solution.
So it's not just about fixing the symptom. It's about addressing the underlying problem.
Precisely. And that's where the power of first principles thinking lies. It helps you see problems with more clarity and come up with more creative and effective solutions.
This has been a really eye-opening conversation.
Yeah.
I feel like I have a whole new set of mental tools to tackle problems in a more effective way.
That's the goal. First principles thinking isn't about having all the answers. It's about having the right questions. And it's about developing a mindset that's constantly seeking deeper understanding and challenging the status quo.
It's about becoming more intentional and deliberate in our thinking instead of just going with the flow or accepting things at face value.
Exactly. And while Elon Musk's examples with SpaceX, Tesla, and Neuralink are certainly inspiring,
Right.
it's important to remember that this thinking can be applied to everyday problems too.
So what are some examples of how our listeners could use this in their daily lives?
Let's say you're struggling with saving money.
Okay.
Instead of just trying to cut back randomly,
Yeah.
you could apply first principles thinking to really understand the fundamentals of your spending habits.
So instead of blindly following budgeting advice, you're figuring out what truly drives your spending and what your priorities actually are.
Exactly. You could ask yourself, what are the essential things I need to spend money on? What are my core values when it comes to finances?
Right.
And once you have a clear understanding of those fundamentals, you can start to build a more conscious and effective budget.
It's like designing a financial plan from the ground up based on deeper understanding of your own needs and goals.
Precisely. And the same approach can be applied to time management. Instead of just wishing you had more hours in the day, you could ask, what are the most important things I need to accomplish? What activities are truly aligned with my values and goals?
So you're identifying those core priorities and then ruthlessly eliminating anything that doesn't contribute to them.
This might mean saying no to commitments that drain your time and energy or delegating tasks that don't require your specific skill set.
It's about becoming more intentional with how we spend our time, not just letting it slip away on things that don't truly matter.
Yeah.
And that's a really powerful shift in mindset. First principles thinking empowers us to take control of our lives rather than feeling like we're constantly reacting to these external pressures.
So for our listeners who are ready to start applying this, what advice would you give them?
Well, the first step is to cultivate curiosity.
Okay.
Start questioning assumptions, even the ones that seem obvious. Ask why more often, and don't be afraid to really dig deeper for those answers.
So it's about developing that childlike sense of wonder and questioning everything we think we know.
Exactly, and don't be afraid to experiment.
Well,
Try applying first principles thinking to a small problem or decision,
right.
and see how it changes your perspective and the solutions that you come up with.
It's like a mental workout. The more we use these muscles, the stronger they become.
And remember, it's a journey, not a destination. You're not going to become a master of first principles thinking overnight. Be patient with yourself and celebrate those aha moments when they come.
This has been an incredibly insightful conversation. I feel like I'm walking away with a new lens through which to view the world and a renewed sense of possibility for what I can achieve.
And that's the power of first principles thinking. It unlocks our potential for creativity, innovation, and problem solving in a way that few other mental models can.
So for our listeners out there, here's a challenge for you to one problem or goal that you're facing and apply the first principles thinking that we've discussed today. Break it down to its fundamental truths. Question your assumptions and see what new solutions emerge. You might just surprise yourself.
And remember, the world is full of unsolvable problems, just waiting for someone to approach them with a fresh perspective and a willingness to think differently.
That's a great note to end on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of first principles thinking. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible.